I didn't know that you utilized a lot of conjugate or Westside principles in your training.
Right.
And I wanted to get a little more insight into how you set that up, what typical workouts are like,
Sure.
and what things you've tweaked and kind of made fit your body, your recoverability. And even if you do utilize things like RPE when you're doing your max effort days, or if you just go for broke.
Yeah. So there's a lot we can get into with that, but I actually made a full video discussing conjugate training modifications. I broke down all the major stuff that people need to be aware of. But as a general template, it's a standard upper lower, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, and then Thursday, Friday, right? And it's only max effort. So I don't do dynamic effort. So I have a max effort upper body, max effort lower body. And it's volume upper, volume lower. And those volume days is basically bodybuilding with barbell movements. So the specificity is higher on those, right? But for max effort, you work up to 3 top singles, cut it at RP 9, maximum 9.5, but that should be an accident. Not that you plan to go that way. You avoid 100% all out grinders because that F's up your recovery, right? So once you hit that training max, all you have to do is percentage back downs off that number. So if someone hits a 300-pound bench press, you do 70% off that 300, you get 210. Do 3 sets of 10 with 210. And over the course of the next 2 weeks or so, you can use ascending RPE to calibrate your training. So if that was like an RP 7, for example, you work it up to 8, then 9. Eventually, you're getting very close to failure. And when you hit that point where fatigue's starting to catch up, you swap out the motion. So this is how you can basically you're rotating the max effort lift every single week. Then you do percentage back downs off that variation. But those back downs are milked for longer. You don't rotate that every single session. So you do get a little bit of practice with that, right? And then the rest is just looking at the major movement patterns. So for me, it's horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical pull. And then you do one accessory per major muscle group that's holding you back. So if it's triceps, you might do some extensions, right? If it's your biceps, because you're specializing in weighted chin-ups at the same time. Because keep in mind, this isn't just in a powerlifting context. I do a lot of weighted calisthenics. Well, you're going to do curls for that. So that's how the bodybuilding element is blended into this as well. It's not only to improve your to work upon your weaknesses, but to actually get bigger, because that's an important priority. So that's kind of what an upper body day looks like. Lower body, it's a squat variation. Again, max effort. 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be a free squat. It could be with the SSB. It could be low bar, high bar, paused. Basically, we talked about this in the previous podcast, but look at what all the top raw powerlifters are doing. Copy their exercise selection to the letter. Plagiarize it. Steal it. Make gains out of it. Don't look at what those Westsiders are doing with the high box squats, with the 200 pounds of band tension. Fuck that. Look at what guys like Mike Teixeira are doing. Borrow and max out with RPE caps, and then do percentage back downs. The same strategy, If using higher volume, like 5 sets of 10, you can drop the percentage even lower, kind of like a boring but big style, Jim Wendler, But I found the best gains at 70%, around there. But keep in mind, the better your leverages are for movement, the higher the percentage can creep up. And it's totally fine to calibrate day of, and that's why I strongly recommend everybody looks at the RPE chart by Mike Teixeira, because it gives you some good guidelines as to where you stand, like in the percentages with the associated reps in reserve, So lower body, it's always a max effort squat, 3-to-1 ratio between squat and dead. So I might do week 1 SSB squat, week 2 high bar pause squat, week 3 it could be a conventional deficit deadlift or whatever variation I want. It doesn't really matter because you're just straining. And then week 4 it's back to squat. So for every month there's going to be at least one heavy deadlift in. And then after the squats, there's always a hip hinge. So good mornings are my movement of choice, but RDLs are fantastic. I generally avoid pulling from the floor for volume because of the stimulus to fatigue ratio that we discussed before. I find that you can just hypertrophy the prime movers of the pole because it's a hip hinge. And if you look at the squat hinge continuum, RDLs and good mornings and all that, they're on the far edge. So you get strong at those, it's going to have carryover. And, you know, you use ascending RP on that as well, or dynamic double progression. Then the rest is just an accessory per week link. So an accessory for your quads, your glutes, potentially your hamstrings, some lower back and abs in there, simple stuff. And then the volume day is the same thing, but you scrap out the max effort. So instead of doing a top set plus your back downs, you're just going right into, traditional bodybuilding setups with barbell movements.
I like that because that seems to infuse and then emphasize so many protocols that have just historically been well known to be devastatingly effective for size and strength. And I think there's a lot of people, I always think that a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot when they try to go into something that looks like a Westside or Conjugate split because they don't give due diligence to what the volume is. They don't give the respect to how important the volume work needs to be. It's kind of the magic between max effort and dynamic effort. And they think that's where the stuff happens, where in reality, it's that paired with all the work you do to actually grow you and fill those weak areas in. And it's almost empowering to look at the training splits of guys from 40, 50 years ago, because you realize how many just extraordinarily good lifters were developed off of basically bodybuilding with a barbell, sets of 10, sets of 15 and 20. I remember the first time I heard Kazmaier speak in a seminar, and he talked about how much he loved rep work, like not just sets of 10, but he'd do sets of 25 for fun. And, it lent itself very well to strongman, but there's no doubt that's also why you got very big and very strong, and it supplemented whatever strength specific work you did. But God, just getting a barbell and doing a few sets of 10. I think I said in the other podcast we did, like there's a few people that really need to go beyond a few sets of 10, or if they infused a few sets of 10 into their training, would be absolutely amazed at how the most simple bodybuilding recommendation still holds up if you take it seriously.
Yeah, you can get some advanced numbers doing that and even become elite. Like people would be surprised how far the basics can really take you. Now, the only issue with being too basic is minimalism that can lead to overuse and not optimizing the system, quote unquote. Like there are some elements of modern periodization and programming that we can take on. But, sometimes a simplistic approach for most people is the way to go, because how strong do they really want to get? How big do they really want to get? And two things you touched upon. Well, one is the higher reps, right? Strongman competitors do that a lot on overhead press. I don't think you guys do a lot of like max effort strict pressing, right? It's a lot of reps. And that's what I did last year on the overhead press. And I got 2 plates, which, hey, it's my worst lift, but I'm proud of it. So it wasn't even the low repetitions that got me there. It was just sets of 10, not even like hyper specializing. And also regarding old school bodybuilders, the ones that were confirmed to be natties back in the day before roids were invented, many of them already pressed 405 without any knowledge of exercise science or programming or anything. It was just intuition, reps, a lot of times flat back. You see the pictures. It's crazy. Like even in the 1960s, there were overhead press competitions where guys were pressing in the mid 200s at like 165 pounds. And how do you think they got there? It wasn't by following modern protocols, that's for sure. Sometimes a basic approach really is the way to go.
Yeah, that reinforces something I believe, which is a lot of what's holding people back. It's not because they haven't found some perfect program or they haven't discovered like the way to train. It's because they don't have the ability to take whatever they are doing and work into it in order to make it work. Because there's a million programs, there's a million different ways to train. You have world's strongest men competitors who have came from Olympic lifting, who've came from bodybuilding, who've came from powerlifting, who've came from football or track and field. Like there are a lot of different training methodologies that are very specific or very non-specific that emphasize a million different things. but they all require their own set of rules, and you have to exist in it long enough to like figure out how to make it work. So I always bias towards general lifting population. What's the simplest approach that has the fewest pitfalls, the things you're least likely to get wrong, that has the most obvious levers you can pull to adjust things based on how you need. And regardless of what method of progression you use, what exercise selection you use, if you do that and you apply it, you hold yourself accountable, you'll get better consistently for a long time. And it goes back to the gear discussion we had. Like, how many people have reached their limit? How many people have even gotten remotely close to topping out whatever training protocol they're on? But just out of sheer boredom or fear of missing out, they'll go and hop on, you know, the next shiny object that they saw on the internet.
Program hopping. That's a big issue, especially among novice lifters. There's a reason why most people produce garbage numbers year after year, even though it's a time of their life where they should be making the most gains with ease, because every program works when you have no muscle on your frame. So if you're not making gains, to me, that indicates something seriously wrong with the program, and you're overcomplicating everything, all kinds of mental masturbation, this program, that program, trying to incorporate advanced periodization strategies. And it's like, do you really need things to be optimal right now? Maybe you just got to get in the trenches, put in that hard work, you know?